Our presentation is on reliability versus validity. Reliability means dependability, that repeated experiments yield the same results when the same conditions are applied. Kind of like expecting that two senators would submit comparable expense reports for attending similar events. In some cases, people believe that a longer study would result in more reliability. This might be why further in education you go, the longer your final exams seem to be. In research, 4 key reliability types exist. Equivalency, relating two sets of data to highlight the degree of relationship. Stability, the agreement of the measuring instrument over time. Internal consistency, ensuring the procedure assesses the same quality. And inter-rater, the consistency of the implementation of a rating system. Validity is concerned with the study's success at measuring what the researcher sets out to measure. Imagine it, asking an essay-style question about the Cold War and actually getting an answer about the Cold War. It's mind-blowing. There are 3 traditional forms of validity. Content. Do the items measure what is intended? Predictive. Do the scores predict a criterion measure? And construct. Do items measure hypothetical constructs or concepts? Remember that reliability does not equate to validity. Just because all the students voted for a lump of coal in the last student election doesn't mean the lump of coal gets to be class president. The results would be valid if the students voted for an existing candidate on the ballot sheet. Then again, the lump of coal could still become a diamond and therefore might have more potential than some of the politicians. Reliability produces the same results on repeated trials and remains stable and consistent over time. This does not, however, necessarily indicate how useful the measurement is. A measure can be perfectly reliable but not at all valid. No matter who's doing the baking, if you follow a chocolate chip cookie recipe, you will always get the same results, chocolate chip cookies. But using the same recipe, you will never produce banana bread. This brings us to validity. Does the instrument measure what it proposes to measure? The relationship between reliability and validity is a very close one. Low reliability guarantees low validity. Measures that are reliable might be valid, and unreliable measures cannot be valid. Put simply, to have validity, you must have reliability. Many assessments administered to students tell us what might be wrong, but don't necessarily tell us how to fix the problems. Validity and reliability can be out of balance when examining large-scale assessments like provincial achievement tests. Those that are marking and interpreting the scores need to be on the same page to ensure that little Sally is being assessed on what she's being asked and not being punished for growing up in a neighborhood that does not validate what's being assessed. So we use large-scale standardized tests for reliability in making assessments easier and more complete. This universal assessment tool is used to measure the validity of the Ministry of Education's mandate to inspire, motivate, and provide opportunities for every child to attain independence, creativity, and self-sufficiency. Educational assessments often derive validity from creating the test instead of the validity from the interpretation of the results. It seems that in making large-scale assessments that the entire population can write, validity may be sacrificed. So little Sally is going to have to know more about who wrote the test and what they're trying to measure than the actual answers themselves. There are many other variables that large-scale assessments unintentionally measure, which raises ethical considerations. Should students from Lac La Biche be writing the same test as students from downtown Calgary? Large-scale tests rely on designs of short answer items that can be objectively scored, viewing learning as the ability to use small bits of knowledge and not the integration of large-scale concepts. With just about every province and state in North America using some form of large-scale assessment, you would think that we would spend more time developing educators that could use examples of formative assessment during the interview process. This just isn't happening. You'll get lots of discussions of summative assessments, but you'd have a better chance of engaging recent graduates in an all-night sit-in or a beer bonging than using formative assessment criteria when applying for a job. New teachers seem to be predisposed to rely on traditional approaches that they had likely been exposed to as students themselves. Investment from government and broader interventions from school leaders needs to happen. Education faculties may be able to help make the connection between what is described within the course outlines and what new teachers are equipped with through training. What is the goal of the educator? The TQS, or Teacher Quality Standards, states, quality teaching occurs when the teacher's ongoing analysis of the context and the teacher's decision about which pedagogical knowledge and abilities to apply results in optimal learning by the students. In simplest terms, we should be determining the outcomes of the learning based on what we set out as the standards. Stop moving the target and let the students hit it. With this, 2 main questions arise for the educator. The first question is in regards to the best teaching practices, and the other is about assessing and reporting the student data. Educators often rely on feedback that they collect from student data to influence their teaching practices. Therefore, some major questions arise in the feedback, such as, how do we achieve the data? How do we provide feedback, and is the feedback reliable and valid? Teachers need to be able to include assessments of students with all skill levels and picking through a mountain of information to determine if the students have gained an understanding of the curriculum. Teachers are often introduced to new and exciting ways of assessing and communicating these assessments. All of this comes with a great deal of trust. Trust that comes from the reliability and validity of the research that supports the assessment styles. Qualitative, quantitative, or even mixed method research can help teachers receive feedback to improve instruction. With greater instruction comes greater learning. Greater learning should result in greater assessment that will increase the validity of the data and prove the reliability. With great validity comes great reliability. Regardless of whether you are completing academic research, running for political office, baking on a Saturday afternoon, or assessing students in your classroom, you will encounter issues of reliability and validity. It's important to consider these measures in reference to each other. To be credible, a study, a campaign, a recipe, or progress report must be reliable and valid. As educators, we need to have at least a basic understanding of reliability and validity and their relationship with each other. Educators should focus on reliability and validity that are most closely linked to their assessments. When creating assessment materials, internal consistency reliability should be looked at very closely. This is the extent to which tests or procedures assess the same characteristic, skill, or quality. An educator who is hoping to assess their student's English skill may include two very similar questions about the same skill. The principle behind this is that the student should give the same answer on both questions. If they don't know how to use a comma, for example, they should get both questions wrong. In a student assessment setting, content validity becomes very important. Research shows that content validity is based on the extent to which measurement reflects the specific intent of the content. When educators aim to study mathematical learning, they create an assessment to test for mathematical skills. If the assessment only tests for multiplication and then draws conclusions from that data, their assessment would not show content validity because it excludes other mathematical functions. The combination of such traits as internal consistency, reliability, and content validity lends itself to credible educational assessment. Credible assessments pave the way for accurate feedback for students, which is what we're all here to provide. Designing academic assessments, either formative or summative, is a very delicate art. You get out of the assessment what you put into it. So let's be assured that there's some bananas in that recipe in order to ensure we get our desired results.